Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe and hit the bell icon for new updates.
They were loud. They were wild. And they were unforgettable. Lizard Lick Towing wasn't just a reality show. It was chaos in a tow truck. Fists flew. Engines roared. And in the middle of it all stood one man, Ron and Amy Shirley. Flanked by his no-nonsense wife Amy and their wild crew, they made towing look like war. But when the cameras stopped rolling, something darker began. What really happened to the cast of Lizard Lick Towing? Why did everything go so quiet, so suddenly? And what tragic twist shook their world, beyond repair? This is not the story you saw on TV. This is the one they never wanted to tell. Lizard Lick, North Carolina, a town too small to be famous. But in 2011, it was thrust into the national spotlight. Thanks to truetv's hit reality show, millions tuned in to watch Ron and Amy wrestle with angry debtors, chase down runaway cars, and fight like hell just to keep their business alive. It was messy. It was wild. And it felt real, because it was. Ron and Amy Shirley wasn't an actor. He was a working man. A husband. A father. And behind the muscles and mohawk was someone carrying a lot more than people ever knew. For 4 seasons, the crew became household names. Ronnie, Amy, Big Juicy, Bobby Brantley. They were more than co-workers. They were family. And America couldn't get enough. But in 2014, without warning, the show was cancelled. No explanation. No final episode. No closure. Just silence. At first, fans thought it was a break. Then a rumor. Then nothing. Ronnie and Amy tried to keep Lizard Lick Towing alive on social media. They posted videos. They did live events. But something had changed. The spotlight faded. And so did the smiles. Then, in February 2022, the silence was shattered. Ronnie and Amy's 21-year-old son, Harley, was shot and killed. Murdered, in cold blood. It wasn't a stunt. It wasn't for TV. It was real. And it broke them. The boy who once stood in the background of his parents' show was gone. Ronnie's voice, once booming with rage and laughter, was now cracked with grief. Amy, the fierce and fearless mama bear, disappeared from the public eye. And Lizard Lick, the business, the brand, the family, began to fade. The cast went their separate ways. Big Juicy, the bold repo queen, left the tow yard and pursued her own path. Bobby Brantley, the fan favorite with a temper and a heart of gold, faced personal demons and health struggles, stepping back from the spotlight entirely. Each of them carried their own pain. But none deeper than the Shirleys. Ronnie tried to stay strong, for Amy. For their fans. For Harley's memory. But behind his sunglasses was a man haunted by what-ifs. He spoke at youth events, warned kids about violence, and tried to turn heartbreak into purpose. But grief doesn't follow rules. And there are no repo jobs for stolen time. The tragedy changed everything. Not just for them, but for every fan who once laughed along with their chaos. Every viewer who tuned in, not for the trucks or the tows, but for the people. The raw, unfiltered, and unrelenting people. Because Lizard Lick Towing was never really about repossessing cars. It was about reclaiming dignity, fighting for your name, and refusing to back down, no matter what the odds. At its heart, it was a story of survival. Of a family doing whatever it took to stay afloat. Even when the world, and often each other, pushed back hard. Ronnie was the fire. Amy was the force. And together, they were unstoppable. We watched them throw punches and pull pranks. We watched them crash through fences and defy logic. And somehow, in all that chaos, we saw something deeper. A love that was messy, loud, and undeniably real. A loyalty that went beyond bloodlines. But tragedy, it has a way of rewriting everything. When Harley Shirley was taken from them, so suddenly, so senselessly, it didn't just break their family. It cracked the very soul of the show. Because this time, there were no second takes. No producers yelling, "Cut." No music to ease the pain. This wasn't reality TV. This was reality. And it was cruel. Ronnie tried to hold it together. He posted tributes. He spoke out. He stood in front of churches, schools, even street corners, warning young people about the streets, about violence, about the pain of watching your child lowered into the ground. Amy, once the fierce warrior with a piercing voice, went quiet. Behind every public post was a private ache. Behind every shared memory was a moment they wished they could change. And the fans, the millions who once laughed at their hijinks, felt a different kind of connection now. One born not of entertainment, but of empathy. Because it's not just that we watched them tow. We watched them live. And now, we watched them grieve. Big Juicy, larger than life and full of fire, stepped away from the scene. She faced her own storms, personal losses, battles with health. And like so many reality stars after the lights go out, she faded into a quieter life. Bobby Brantley, the lovable hothead with a heart the size of the South. He too struggled with his own demons. After the show ended, he tried to stay in touch with fans. But without the cameras, it was harder to hold on to that purpose. He's been through medical scares, heartbreaks, moments where he had to choose peace over popularity. So what happened to the cast of Lizard Lick Towing? They grew older. They grew quieter. And in many ways, they grew apart. Because sometimes, when the storm hits, even the strongest family can't hold on the same way. And yet, despite the heartbreak, despite the silence, there's still something there. In every old clip that resurfaces, in every fan post, in every child who remembers watching the show beside their parents, Lizard Lick still lives. Not just as a business, not just as a brand, but as a symbol of something rare, something real. It's hard to say what comes next. Will Ronnie ever return to television? Does he even want to? Or has the loss of his son reshaped everything he once believed about fame? Will Amy ever speak publicly again? Will she find peace, not in the spotlight, but in the quiet corners of a healing heart? Will the crew, scattered across the South, ever reunite for one last ride? No one knows. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. Because we didn't just watch a show. We invested in a journey. We believed in it. The rise, the fall, and now the silence. But in that silence, if you listen closely, there's still a heartbeat. A quiet reminder that behind every show, every fight, every staged repo, there were real people, real pain, real love. And the truth is, the story behind Lizard Lick Towing is far darker, and far more human, than reality TV ever dared to show. It's a story of fame, of loss, of what it means to have the world cheering for you one day, and crying with you the next. It's about the kind of grief that doesn't fade, the kind of strength that doesn't look like muscles, but like standing up every morning when your heart is shattered. And maybe that's the truth we needed all along. Because behind the catchphrases and the chaos, behind the repo trucks and the raging crowds, Lizard Lick was always about heart. A heart that broke, but still beats. So if this story moved you, if you remember the wild rides, the wild fights, and the love that tied it all together, please, take a moment, like this video. Subscribe to Limelight Leaks for more untold stories, the ones that cut deeper than fame. And tell us in the comments, what do you remember most about Lizard Lick? Was it Ronnie's roar? Amy's fire? Or the way it made you feel like family? Whatever it was. A line Ronnie shouted that made you laugh. A stare Amy gave that could stop a grown man in his tracks. A scene so chaotic, so unreal, it somehow felt more real than anything else on TV. Maybe it was the way they stood up for each other. The way they defended their crew like family, no matter how wild things got. Or maybe it was the way they reminded you of yourself, of your own family, of how messy love can be, of how beautiful it is to care so deeply, even when everything's on fire. Whatever that moment was for you, let it live on. Don't let it fade into just another show you once watched. Because for Ronnie, Amy, and everyone who lived it. It wasn't just a show. It was life. Their real life. With real blood, real sweat, real consequences. And sometimes, the cost of fame isn't felt until the cameras stop rolling. Because in the end, behind every spotlight, there's always a shadow. Fame shines bright. It dazzles. It pulls people in. But it also blinds. It hides the cracks, covers the scars, mutes the cries that don't fit the script. In those shadows, that's where the truth hides. The truth about grief, about choices, about the battles fought when no one's watching. Ron and Amy Shirley, the man with a big voice and even bigger presence. He doesn't walk the same way he used to. You can see it in his eyes. The weight he carries now isn't just about business. It's about loss. Loss that rewired his entire world. And Amy, the powerhouse, the mama bear, the backbone of Lizard Lick. She's lived through a mother's worst nightmare. She doesn't need the spotlight anymore. Because after you've buried a child, there's no stage that feels big enough for your pain. And yet, they keep going. Not for fame. Not for ratings. But because sometimes, survival itself is the loudest form of strength. In the silence that followed the show, there was growth. There was retreat. And there was reflection. That shadow, the one behind the lights. It holds a story we almost missed. A story about what happens when a public life crashes into private heartbreak. When the characters we cheered for become the people we mourn with. And that's the thing about television. It gives us a window. But it rarely gives us depth. It doesn't linger on pain. Or follow the story after the curtain drops. But you did. The fans. You never stopped caring. You still share the clips. You still comment. You still ask, where are they now? Are they okay? Will they ever come back? And that matters more than you know. Because sometimes, what keeps people going is simply knowing they're not forgotten. So let the story of Lizard Lick towing remind you. Behind every outburst, there's a reason. Behind every wild scene, a person. And behind every loss, a love that refuses to disappear. Let that be the legacy. Not just the chaos. Not just the tow trucks. But the heart that beat underneath it all. Let it remind you that fame doesn't shield you from pain. That strong men still cry. That tough women still break. And that sometimes, the loudest families are the ones holding in the most silence. Don't let their story become a footnote. Don't let it fade into the background noise of forgotten reality shows. Because in that shadow, there's still a heartbeat. There's still a lesson. There's still a light, flickering behind the loss. A reminder that no matter how dark things get, some truths deserve to be remembered. Not for the spectacle, but for the humanity. So, take a moment. Look back not just at what they did, but who they were, who they are. And ask yourself, what would you do if your own story was on display? If the world watched you win, and then watched you break, would you find the courage to stand again? Because they did. Ronnie still speaks out. Still shows up for kids who feel lost. Still tells his story, not for pity, but for purpose. Amy, though quieter now, remains a symbol of fierce motherhood. Of love so deep, it refuses to be defined by grief alone. And the fans? You're still here. Still listening. Still remembering. So keep sharing. Keep telling their story. Keep letting others know, this wasn't just a TV show. It was a life lived loud. A family that fought. A journey that deserves to echo, even after the credits roll. This is more than nostalgia. It's truth. And the truth is never just black and white. It's messy. It's painful. It's real. And that's exactly what makes it worth telling. So if this story moved you, if you felt something, even just a flicker, of what they went through, please, like this video. Subscribe to Limelight Leaks, where we don't just tell stories. We uncover them. The forgotten ones. The painful ones. The ones that remind us what it means to be human. And in the comments below, tell us what you remember about Lizard Lick. Was it the wild energy, the southern grit, or the love that always found a way to shine through the chaos? Because somewhere in North Carolina, a family still heals, a father still speaks, and a story still waits to be remembered. This is Limelight Leaks, and behind every spotlight, there's always a shadow. But in that shadow, sometimes, you find the most powerful truth of all.